Hello, everyone. Welcome to Just for the Love of Reading, where we read books to inspire, motivate, and empower. Today's book in our book club series is Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. This novel falls under the following genres: science fiction, speculative fiction, and psychological fiction. Never Let Me Go centers around the lives of Ruth, Kathy, and Tommy, who appear to have a normal childhood. They attend a boarding school, Haitian boarding school, and they have, lives that kids have, right? They play games, they tease each other, they make friends, get in fights with their friends. So they appear to have a normal childhood. However, Ruth, Kathy, and Tommy always sensed that they were different. So after prying, asking questions, remaining curious, they actually find out that they are clones whose sole purpose is to donate their organs. So that's why they were created, to donate their organs, which is one of the benefits of having clones. So the reader wants to know, will Ruth, Kathy, and Tommy get down to the core of who they really are and find out everything they need to know? And will they be able to change the fate of their lives? Now, although this is a science fiction novel, this story really centers around the friendship of Ruth, Kathy, and Tommy. And to me, as a reader, it is the core and the heart of the story. And, despite the fact that they are, clones and are not considered to be human, they have a human experience, and with friendship and loss and trust and betrayal and all the things that we go through as humans. And so that human experience really connects the reader to the story, and in my opinion, I think that's the core of it. So I'm going to start by giving a little bit of a brief background on each character, and then I'm going to talk about their friendships throughout their lives, when they were children, adolescents, to young adults, and then as adults. So I'm going to start with Tommy. Tommy, in my opinion, is the misunderstood one, right? He is the kid that, everyone would make fun of and tease him. And as a result of that, Tommy would throw tantrums, like little tantrums. And that's just how he responded to the way that his peers treated him. Ruth always believed that if, Tommy sort of brought it upon himself, like the teasing, because of the way in which he acted. And so she believed that if he actually controlled his temper and his reactions to certain things, he wouldn't be such an easy target to be teased. Kathy, on the other hand, is the more empathetic one. She would try to make him feel better. She would go up to him and try to cheer him up and calm him down. And so that's their dynamic as children with Tommy. Ruth is the leader. She is the person that really sets the tone in whichever environment that she's in, right? So she'll decide who is her friend and who isn't her friend. She will decide, what they're doing and what they're not doing. And so she definitely has that leadership type personality. And you'll see that in the novel. And even when her and Kathy become friends, it's actually Ruth who initiates the friendship between her and Kathy. And so that is the role that Ruth plays. Kathy, I think, is the opposite of Ruth, in the sense where she is not as assertive, not as assertive as Ruth, and she doesn't really deny the friendship when Ruth initiates it with them. So she kind of just goes with the flow and just sort of takes things as they come. And I will point out that Kathy is actually the narrator of the story, so the narration is in first person. So we're hearing the story from Kathy's perspective. So that is their relationship as children. So I really want to touch into Kathy and Ruth as kids because, they're two girls, and to me they had like a love-hate relationship, right? Like one day they were friends and everything was okay, and then the next day they, would fight, and Kathy would be hurt, would get her feelings hurt by certain things that Ruth would do, like cheat on a chess game or like deny saying something that she once said. And so those sort of things would hurt Kathy's feelings. And so Kathy found herself feeling a little bit of, resentment towards Ruth in those situations. There would be times when Kathy would say things to, intentionally or unintentionally hurt Ruth's feelings. And then when she realized that Ruth was affected by her comments, she would try to find ways to make her feel better by doing nice gestures for her. And I also should add that Ruth was the same way towards Kathy, right? Like she would do certain things through her actions to show that she cared and looked out for Kathy. And so they had that sort of relationship. And Kathy also felt a level of loyalty to Ruth, especially as children, right? Like she would defend Ruth in the presence of their other peers and things like that. So there was that aspect to it as well, where, Kathy felt a sense of loyalty to Ruth. So now let's move on to their adolescent years. So as adolescents, they're growing and their interests are changing, right? So they're into different things. And so Ruth and Tommy actually end up dating, right? And so Kathy remains sort of the neutral friend between the two, where she is friends with both of them and as individuals, right? But then she's also plays the role of like the mediator in their relationship. So if Ruth needed to find out information about Tommy, she would go through Kathy. And if Tommy said anything, Kathy would translate it back to Ruth. And so Kathy really played that role in their adolescent years as sort of the neutral middle person in their three-person dynamic. So now they move on to their young adult years, right? So I'm going to say maybe not even like teenagers, maybe 16, going on 17. They end up at the cottages, right? And so this can be considered their high school, early college sort of transition for them from Hailsham. And so they are at the cottages. And here, they're growing up, right? They're teenagers, and their dynamic is still the same, right? Where Tommy and Ruth are still dating, but then Kathy is sort of the middle person, right? So they still have that dynamic. However, this is the time where Kathy begins to assert herself a little bit more towards Ruth, and we see that in response, Ruth becomes a little more manipulative in the way that she, interacts and communicates with Kathy. So we see that as well in the friendship dynamic. And I also just want to point out, that as a reader, I really noticed that this was a time where Ruth was really trying to just find herself, right? She wanted she had a vision and a dream of the life she would want to have, right? Like she talked about working in an office and living in a nice place and just, living a nice life. And so we see here that Ruth is trying to find herself and her identity at this stage. And I think it's fair to say that she didn't really get the support from Kathy or Tommy that she wanted. And they almost didn't really take her seriously or really see how much she wanted to just have a lovely life and be a person of value, instead of just a clone, right? And so we see that in Ruth. So now, again, I had mentioned that, Kathy becomes more assertive, Ruth becomes more manipulative. There's an incident that happens where Kathy is caught off guard and Ruth betrays Kathy's trust. And it's this act that causes Kathy to literally walk away from the friendship between her, Ruth, and Tommy, because it involved Tommy as well. And so we see that Kathy literally walks away from the friendship, and she doesn't turn back. Carry on to their lives as adults. This is where Ruth and Tommy start their organ donation process, and Kathy becomes a carer. So we find out Kathy ends up meeting one of their childhood friends who's also in the donation process, and she updates Kathy on Ruth's state, that, you know, Ruth has started her process, she's not doing too well, she's just not getting along with the carers, and she suggests to Kathy that she actually becomes Ruth's carer. So Kathy finds Ruth and does just that, and so she is there to support Ruth during her organ process, donation process. So there's a shift in their in their interactions when they reunite, because this time Ruth is at her most vulnerable state, right? Ruth is, donating her organs. She's not as strong as she used to be, and so when she reunites with Kathy, they, as much as they try to get things back to normal, there's that underlying sense of mistrust on Ruth's part, because the way that they left the last time, it wasn't on good terms, and for all Ruth could know, like, Kathy could be wanting to get revenge on her, in her most vulnerable state because of what she did before. And so there's a bit of that uneasiness that we see as the reader between them, but that eventually subsides, and they end up building that unspoken trust. Fast forward, they end up reuniting with Tommy. So the three of them are together, and it's a full circle moment, right? And Tommy's also going through the organ donation process. So it's at this point that Kathy and Ruth really come full circle with their relationship. And as the reader, to me, this was Ruth's repentance, right? And time for her to really repent for her regarding her relationship with Kathy and Tommy, but mostly Kathy. This is where Ruth apologizes to Kathy for the way that she treated her throughout their years as friends, and she even admitted to Kathy that she intentionally tried to pull Tommy and Kathy apart, right? And so that was one of the dynamics in the friendship too, where, even though Kathy was the middle person, Ruth would say things to make Kathy believe that Tommy didn't really care about her as much as she thought he did, right? So Ruth finally admits to that and really seeks and asks for Kathy's forgiveness. And as a way to make up for what she did, in the past, she provides Kathy and Tommy with the number to get a referral. And this is Ruth's way of, really just trying to make up for lost time, literally, and give her friends an opportunity for a better life together and more time together. So fast forward, towards the end, Ruth and, the organ donation kind of, takes over. Kathy does have a little more time with Tommy, but she eventually, loses him to the donations. And so it's Kathy again on her own, trying to figure out her life and how to move forward with that. And so that is, just really a run through of their friendship throughout their time, different stages in their lives. Okay, how did Never Let Me Go empower me? This novel empowered me in the sense where it's never take anything at face value. Now, this may sound like cliche, like, oh, you should know this already, like, you never really believe everything you hear at face value. And I say this because Ruth, Kathy, and Tommy, had they not, and mostly Tommy actually, if they hadn't had gone with their, whether it's intuition or curiosity, they would not have gotten to the bottom of who they really are, which are clones. And so just that intentional not wanting to give up and really get to the bottom of things is what really helped them. And so I think it's especially hard, when you are trying to seek answers from those that you care about, because they're close to you and you wouldn't think they would lie to you. However, there's a part of you that needs to know. And so I think with anything, it's just a reminder for us to never take things at face value and always analyze and look beneath things before we, draw conclusions. How did this novel inspire me? Oh, wow. It inspired me to read more books in this genre. And I find myself telling myself this all the time, and I branch out, read different types of books. However, I didn't really know they were clones. Was there any part in I really didn't know they were clones until they went out and said it, that they were clones. And so I'm wondering, as the reader, did you realize they were clones at a certain point in the novel? Did they point it out and I missed it? But and then the only time that I really remember that they were clones is when they brought it up, right? So I wasn't really on that aspect of them being clones. It was just the experience of the friendship that really got to me as the reader. So let me know, did you know they were clones, and if so, when? So yeah, if you are looking for a novel, that has that sci-fi element to it, really, really touches on friendships and how friendships can be so beautiful, they're so necessary, yet so complicated at the same time. It's a beautiful story of friendship, though, a full circle moment of friendship. We really see these characters from their childhood to when they're adults. And so that's literally a lifetime of a friendship, right? So if you're looking for a novel in that sense, Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro is the story for you. So let me know, what did you think of the novel? When did you realize they were clones? And how would you describe the relationship dynamic between Ruth, Kathy, and Tommy? And did you think they were going to get a deferral? Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.